trade. So some of us are simply a bit bored of hearing people ripping at closed wounds and then crying about their hurt or their presumed hurt. Because everybody could do this. 1 million Europeans were stolen by North Africans over the course of decades of the North African Barbary pirate.
Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be checking out a video where Douglas Murray is one of the speakers, titled "Where Do We Stop? Piers Morgan on Slavery, Reparation and Apologizing for History." Wow. I believe this is going to be an interesting one. Let's start with the video. Go.
Well, today is, of course, the 4th of July. It's a day that America celebrates because they booted we British out, our monarchy out, our mad King George dropped the ball. Otherwise, I would possibly be King Piers right now of the United States of America. So we don't obviously celebrate it with quite such enthusiasm over this side of the pond. But amid the hot dogs and fireworks, even this day of patriotic celebration in the States has become divisive. There's a growing trend for black Americans to celebrate Juneteenth as an alternative to July 4th. Veteran Congresswoman Maxine Waters in 2021 claimed the Declaration of Independence wasn't for equality and it was only for white men. Her comments were echoed by her fellow Democrat Cori Bush, who said black people still aren't free. So is there something in all this? Should these national institutions and occasions be opportunities for reflection and apology rather than celebration? Well, joining me now is best-selling author of The War on the West and Conservative commentator Douglas Murray, country music legend Lee Greenwood, and my Talk TV contributor Paula Rowan-Adrian, and Talk TV presenter Richard Tice. All right, well, a stellar panel. Douglas, let me start with you. You read a great piece this week for The Telegraph about this weird trend. I agree with you, I think it's weird, where we're being compelled to just apologise constantly for everything that happened in the past. Why are we doing this?
That's right. It's a very strange act of masochism, really, and an act of masochism carried out by people who don't seem to know anything. I mean, people talk about the British monarchy having to apologise for slavery. It was King George III who signed the Anti-Slavery Act into law in 1807. Prince Albert gave one of the most extraordinary anti-slavery addresses when the British were still policing the anti-slave trade on the high seas in 1840 to the Anti-Slavery League in London. All of this was addressed 200 years ago. And today, unfortunately, there's a kind of new type of malcontent, and usually also a huckster to boot, who just decides that none of this happened. Usually it's because they don't know it happened. And as a result, they look at our history and everything in our country, right up to just, innocent pastimes like cricket, and they decide to name everything as guilty. And, you could do this to everyone and to everything, but most civilizations and cultures don't behave like this because most of them aren't just masochistic and so self-hating.
All right, Paula, your response to that?
I actually agree with Douglas about the fact that we don't know enough. He's absolutely right. We don't know enough, and it's important that we do. But part of the knowledge is also understanding the hurt and pain that were caused, not just about the good things. It's not just about the cherry picking. And wrongs are not about being masochistic. Saying sorry is not a bad thing. Saying sorry is actually a very empowering thing to do.
Why does it matter that a bunch of royals now get forced into issuing grovelling apology? Who cares? How does it change anything? It doesn't do anything, in my estimation, to impact on current slavery, where it exists around the world. It doesn't really make any difference to institutional racism, as we've seen in certain parts of society. I don't know what difference it makes. It might make people feel a bit better to see a royal grovelling, but so what?
See, I don't agree with you, surprise, surprise. I do think it makes a difference. I do think it makes a difference that people in power are heard to acknowledge pain and hurt. I do think it's important that people in power have taken the time.
But whose pain and hurt are you talking about? It's not people living today. These are going back hundreds of years in some cases, these crimes of slavery and so on. We all agree it was outrageous. It's been debated, really year after year after year. We all know this. I don't think that people have a lack of knowledge. And I'm not quite sure where the apology tour ends. What's the end game here?
So the end game is about the ability to understand the true history, not just the part of history that we have been taught And that is the difficulty. So you're talking about who's the apology for. Well, the apology is for me. The apology is for those who have suffered. The apology is for those who continue to struggle through colonialism and through slavery. And I do think that it's important that royalty are coming forward and saying, we apologise for the part that we played.
All right, so is that it? Is that enough? When is enough enough? If we all say sorry today... Hang on.
The British government, when is enough enough? To repay, to compensate slavery.
So if we all say sorry today...
enough?
Well, that's my question to you, and you're not answering it.
My point is,
if we all say sorry today, it was terrible, which we all know, can we then say, right, that's done, we're going to look forwards, we're going to be positive, we're going to celebrate our achievements, learn from our failures, and we're done with apologising?
Absolutely. And so how are we going to learn from our failures if we do not understand what we did wrong?
You learn from your failures because that's what we're doing at the moment. The sort of report you had from the...
How do you learn from your failures if you don't know what you did wrong, if you refuse to accept that you did wrong?
Because the cricket board, the ECB, they've just produced a report. They reported. Some of it was good. Some of it you can criticise or question. The point is, we've learned from that. We're moving on. We're celebrating. We're being positive. Otherwise,
how have we learned
I tell you what it does. It depresses everybody. It leads to a perception of decline.
I agree with that. I think what it does, I want to bring in Lee Greenwood here, who's a big country star in America, and he wrote God Bless the USA, one of the great anthems celebrating the United States. It's July 4th. Obviously, as I said at the start here, Lee, we don't celebrate it with quite such enthusiasm this side of the pond. We sort of take a view that Mad King George dropped the ball a bit, but I'm happy for my American friends that you have this day to celebrate. You wrote this great anthem, really, for your country. Can we be proud of our country anymore, or is this kind of this desire to feel this terrible regret about everything and apology for everything? Does that mar the pride? How do you feel?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say the people that I run with and talk to, and believe me, I tour across America all the time. We do 140, 50 days a year, every doghouse, outhouse, and roundhouse. And I talk to the American public. They listen to what I say, listen to what I sing. I happen to be a country music performer, but I was born in California, spent 20 years in Nevada. I live in the South now. And I wrote this song because it was for unity. It's a unity and for military sacrifice. And yeah, America started as an interesting expedition and then an experiment, and we fought it out. We fought each other in the Civil War and said, okay, we're going to bury the hatchet here. The trouble is, as we move forward, a lot of people try to change history. I'm okay with history. I'm okay with apologizing for what happened back then. But I agree with you, that was back then. Let's move forward. Let's move on past that, and let's not change history and try to change what happened.
Yeah, I completely agree. Douglas, the problem is we've forgotten how to be genuinely proud of our great countries, both America and the United Kingdom, two of the greatest countries in the world. It's almost like every day now, somebody somewhere, normally on the left, the woke left, is queuing up to find a reason to hate the countries and their histories.
Well, it's a kind of grievance competition. Your guest earlier just tried to engage in it. I don't know what hurt she believes she's had from slavery. All of this was addressed 2 centuries ago. Everything has consequences. All history has consequences and ramifications. But, you know, if we were to play this fairly, we would at least look at all of the countries around the world that engaged in the slave trade who are simply not interested in any form of reparations. The Ottoman Empire, all the Arab countries who not just traded far more slaves than across the Atlantic, but castrated all the men so that there wouldn't be any more African slaves after them. They worked them to the bone. I see no interest across Africa in paying reparations for selling their brother and sister Africans into slavery or for working them to the bone to the present day. There is slavery across Africa today. In fact, there are more slaves in the world today than there were at the height of the transatlantic slave trade. So some of us are simply a bit bored of hearing people ripping at closed wounds and then crying about their hurt or their presumed hurt. Because everybody could do this. 1 million Europeans were stolen by North Africans over the course of decades of the North African Barbary pirate slave trade. Where would you end if you did that? The answer is you couldn't end, because nobody is alive who has actually suffered the hurt, and nobody is alive who did the wrong. And I'd make one other point, if I may. It's always the countries that people want to come to who are put through this struggle session. Britain, like America and France, are the most desired destinations for migrants worldwide and have been for centuries. Why is that? It's not because we're racist, it's because we're better. It's because we're good. It's because when we see racism, we actually call it out and recognize it as a sin. Try finding that across Africa. Try finding that across the Middle East or in China. Nobody would hear. So what we have is a situation where the more virtuous countries are presented as the worst countries. It's sick, and most of us are tired of it.
Thank you, Douglas.
I am so sorry that Douglas is bored by the pain that has come from.
That's not what he said.
Through slavery.
He didn't say. He didn't say. But what you're doing there, what you're doing. Yeah, but hang on, Paula. Paula, you're being very disingenuous. That's not what he said.
I am.
The viewers aren't stupid. They know exactly what he said. He's not saying he's bored by the pain. He's saying, and I think it's a perfectly valid point, the pain that people who are alive today are claiming they're suffering for what happened 200 or 300 years is not a real pain. They're not the ones who suffered what was going on 200 or 300 years ago.
So, in terms of justice for all, I mean, I think we'd all agree that there should be justice.
Well, I'm not suffering from when the Normans invaded this country.
Agree.
I'm not suffering from what my ancestors went through.
I noticed that I'm not being allowed to respond.
Or from the Romans. In other words, where do you take this? I mean, should I now be feeling pain from what the Romans did to this country?
In terms of slavery, I can take it to 2015, when the slave owners were compensated by the government. So I can take it to that extent.
Where does your personal pain come?
And I can say to you that I don't think that apologising is a bad thing. I think that apologising for a wrong is a good thing. I think that the Dutch royal family have done a fantastic thing in acknowledging what has gone wrong.
OK, I hear you, but
I
honestly think it'll make no difference at all.
Wow. What an interesting topic, an interesting debate. Read the title out once again. Where do we stop? Piers Morgan on slavery, repatriation, and apologizing for history. Wow. How long are the whites going to keep apologizing to blacks? How long are they going to keep apologizing to blacks? Believe me, I know Africa suffered a lot during the slave trade, but we have gone past that. And the slave trade of a thing happened way back years ago, just according to Douglas Murray point that it's about 200 years now. And even when the slave trade was ended, when the slave trade were ended, America and British and every other country that engage in the slave trade, they apologize for their actions. And a lot of, since then, 200 years ago till this day, a lot of repatriation have been made. I can remember watching a video where Apache demand an apology from Chalakek. And what Chalakek told Apache was that he owed Apache no apology because he never owned trade, he never engaged in slave trade, so he shouldn't be the one apologizing because the people that engage in the slave trade, they are no more. They are no more. So him as an individual, as a citizen of America, he owe no one apology. It's the same debate I'm seeing in this video. It's the same debate I'm seeing in this video. I believe just by Douglas Murray points, I believe how long is the whites going to keep apologizing to Africa? And precise, the whites we have now, they don't own slave. They never engage in slave trade. So why should they apologize for what they knew nothing about? And even the Africans that is claiming they suffered a lot. The present blacks we have right now, they know nothing about slave trade. They never suffer any pain from slave trade. Those that suffered from slave trade were suffered 200 years ago, and right now they are no more. So you claiming to be a black and claiming that you are suffering because of the slave trade that happened 200 years ago, whilst you weren't even born then, I think that's an understatement. So, and not just in America, even in UK, a lot of repatriation have been made. The whites has apologized and they kept on apologizing. They kept on apologizing. They kept on making repatriation. When will enough be enough? When will enough be enough? We don't have to always claim to be the victim of slave trade, when we clearly know that the blacks presently living now, they never experienced slave trade. Those that experienced slave trade were 200 years ago. And you not coming to claim, you not coming to say you are feeling the pain of slave trade that happened 200 years ago. I don't believe that. Because if you know the pain that those that actually engage in the slave trade, if you know the pain they felt then, you won't be coming right now and be saying you are feeling the pain of the slave trade that happened 200 years ago. You never felt any pain. Those that felt the pain were 200. They felt the pain 200 years ago. We believe the whites have done something wrong, and they have apologized for it. And the people we are owing accountable, they never own trade. They never own slave. They never engage in slave trade. I believe, just like the lady said, I believe it would cost nothing for the white to apologize to the black. It will cost nothing. I believe that. But let's state facts. How long are we going to keep demanding for apology from the whites? How long are we going to keep demanding for apology? When will enough be enough? Just like Douglas Murray and Piers Morgan have stated that, when will enough be enough? A lot of repatriation have been made. A lot of blacks have been compensated. Believe me, even the blacks that were compensated, presently, they never experienced the pain of slave trade. They never experienced the pain of slave trade. I think we've gone past this type of argument. We've gone past it. I think it's right time Africa have to start, building their nation, developing their nation, and making Africa great again. Instead of blaming the white for our problem, I think it's right time we start taking account for our problem and finding better way to address our problem instead of always playing victim. We know the blacks suffered during the time of slave trade. Everyone knows that. And they have apologized for what they did to Africa. And they have even compensated a lot of Africa in America and in UK. A lot of repatriation have been made. And the black lady agreed to this. She even stated the point that in 2015 that even some blacks were settled and the whites also apologized. If this was done in 2015, I believe it was also done 200 years ago. So why are you not demanding for another apology? I feel Africa has to come together to make Africa again, to make Africa great again, come together to build Africa instead of always blaming the whites for our problem. The slave trade we are talking about happened 200 years ago, and believe me, we have gone past it. You can't tell me you are feeling the pain of slave trade. Believe me, if you know the pain those that engage in slave trade felt, then you won't come here and be you won't come here and be saying you are feeling the pain of slave trade. Believe me, you know nothing about the pain of slave trade. You know nothing about what our forefathers, you know nothing about what they felt. So you can't come here and try to say you are feeling the pain of slave trade when you never felt anything. You weren't born and you never felt any pain. And presently, the whites that are living presently right now, they never own slave. They never engage in slave trade. So how come you are demanding for an apology from the present whites? So I believe Africa, we all agree that during the time of slave trade, Africa suffered a lot from the whites, and the whites have apologized for that, and they kept on apologizing for that, and they also compensated a lot of blacks in America and in UK and some other countries, and they have kept on doing that, and Africa kept on demanding for an apology. So I believe the whites owe us no apology. The present whites we have right now, they owe us no apology because they never owned slave, they never engaged in slave trade. Those that engaged in slave trade were, I think it's from 200 years ago, and they have apologized for it, and we have gone past that. So I believe instead, the most pressing need we blacks have now is trying to build our nation, trying to build our country to develop just like the developed countries. So you see a lot of blacks always relocating to Western countries for greener pastures. I believe if we can build our nation, if we can make our nation to be a place whereby our citizens, they will be comfortable to work, I believe Africans won't be relocating to the Western world in search of greener pastures. I think that is the most pressing need we should be talking about, not trying to blame the whites for the cause of our problem. And just like Douglas Murray have rightly said that we kept demanding for apology from America, from Europe, from France, that even Arab, they engage in slave trade. And during the time of slave trade, they castrated all the men. And yet no one is demanding for an apology from them. But all the apology is that the blacks are always demanding is either from UK, from America, from France, and you kept on blaming them for the cause for the problem Africa is facing today, and yet you always want to relocate to their country in search of greener pasture. I believe I've really learned a lot from this video. I believe you also do. So I would like to hear your comments. Don't forget, click on the subscribe button, click on the like button. Do have a nice day. Yeah.